This week, Emmet and I continue our look at Jack Kirby's Eternals. In issues 14 through 16, we start to feel like Marvel editorial is trying to rein Jack in to some extent, as we get a cameo from the Hulk, but not really the Hulk, while whatever the Eternals accomplished in the Unimind gets pushed way to the back burner. We talk about what was good and what was disappointing about these 3 issues. First, I'd like to thank our patrons for helping to keep the show going. You can pitch in by pledging at least $2 a month at patreon.com/deconcomics. This is Tim.
This is Emmet.
And this is Deconstructing Comics. Welcome to Deconstructing Comics. This is Tim in Tokyo with Emmet in country Victoria, Australia. How are you doing?
I'm well, Tim. How are things? I've had my morning coffee. I'm raring to go.
What was that sound? It sounded like you were popping a cork.
Yeah, sorry about that. I also have a little glass of water here, and it hit against the table as I moved it to my mouth. And I apologize. That's bad podcast etiquette.
Well, it sounded like, that's not coffee he's drinking.
Mm-hmm. I had the coffee. The coffee's happened. Now I'm having to hydrate.
Okay.
Folks, this is fascinating stuff.
Yeah. All right, so we're back with more Jack Kirby Eternals comics, issues 14, 15, 16. I was a little disappointed with this set for a couple of reasons. Well, one, I mean, you've got seemingly the Hulk on the cover, and it turns out Bruce Banner is nowhere around. This is not the Hulk. We'll get to that. So it just feels like kind of a cheat to sell comics. But beyond that, going back to issue 10, Zurus was calling everyone into the Unimind to discuss how to respond to the Celestials doing this 50-year judgment. But in these issues, the Unimind ends, and then we immediately have other chaos that's actually kind of a side effect of the Unimind. But what was discussed in the Unimind? What's the plan of action? There's nothing about that in these issues.
Well, to be fair, Tim, there's a step before the chaos. And that step is Cersei's after party. There's the after party, the after Unimind party. And you get to hang out and relax and have a few drinks and flirt with a sociologist or anthropologist. Sorry.
Okay, so in the Unimind, they're saying, okay, you bring the chips, and I'll bring the booze, and
we'll talk about it in the morning.
I mean, I felt like the impression I was getting was that they were having some kind of hippie rap session in the Unimind and just, like smoking some joints and saying like, wow, man, that's really awesome. And
yeah, was it a be-in? Was that what they used to call them? Or a happening?
Happening? Something like that.
Pass the duchy to the left-hand side. Yeah. But yes, no, the story goes, we've actually referred to this in this series previously. The story goes that Kirby was forced to include other Marvel characters, and he was going out of his way to not feature other Marvel. So we've previously seen The Thing in this series, but it wasn't The Thing. It was somebody made to look like The Thing. And here we meet the Hulk, but it's not the Hulk. We'll get to that, as you said. But I feel like this set of issues feels like an interruption. And that's where that editorial injunctions come in. It's like, make this more fun for people because we don't want to hear about Gestalt Uniminds. No one cares about that.
Well,
that's how we get this
editorial. I mean, I guess his in the credits of issue 14, admired by Archie Goodwin, but of course Jack Kirby himself is credited as editor because this was the era when writers were also editors, and there was a particular thing in these issues that I thought if he'd had a different person as editor, maybe it would have been handled better, but we'll get to that too.
Yeah, there's a couple of slips of the tongue that are a bit duff lines here and there. But I think when I don't mean the book editor. I don't mean Archie Goodwin, because I think Archie Goodwin's been a sort of reliable collaborator. I'm talking about above that. I'm talking about like a line editor. I'm talking about actual creative directors within the company. I'm probably talking about Roy Thomas. If I'm talking about someone, that's probably who I mean. Allegedly, etc. Whoever you can think of whose creative drive is to always stick to the mean, always go to the middle of the road and just stick there. That's who I'm talking about. It's Roy Thomas.
Okay. All right. So issue 14. It says face to face against the cosmic powered Hulk. Might have been better to say a cosmic powered Hulk. But this Hulk presenting being is throwing Makari, and Icarus is there also in a fight scene on the cover.
There is something interesting about this. I mean, the cover actually does happen for the first time, in that Makari does face an actual physical challenge, but it's repeated in these issues, and I think this is just slipping under this pablum of a plot, that an Eternal can't necessarily die, but they can be injured so grievously that they are warped. Yeah. And I think that's an interesting observation. That's an interesting idea. I was probably building to something similar to what we saw with his Fourth World books, where you had that child prodigy character who got turned into this freakish dwarf. And so I wonder if we were getting to something along those lines, that, you know, we were going to meet a character who then would become different, or had been made different and was resentful about it. Because Kirby is not very subtle in his depictions of disability and
or anything else,
and what that entails. Yeah. So I wonder if that's what that was maybe leading to. But I don't believe we meet that, because this series ends.
Yeah, we've only got 3 more issues after this set.
Yep.
Okay, Icarus and the cosmic powered Hulk. So the splash page shows the two of them facing off and the Unimind in between them. So we start out not with any characters we've seen before. There's a professor named Timothy Ryan. I feel like Timothy Ryan is the name of someone in the real world that I've heard of.
There's a Democrat politician called Tim Ryan.
Okay, maybe that's who I'm thinking of.
That might be who you're thinking of. I had the same moment. I was like, wait, that is somebody.
I was thinking like an actor, or I don't know. Anyway, this guy sees there's a light on in the lab on the campus of the Maryland Institute of Technology.
No one ever spells it out. No one ever spells it out. It's MIT.
Well, that would be the Massachusetts Institute of Technology.
Oh,
yeah. This I think is
distinct.
Perhaps a fictional university.
I see.
I've never heard of the Maryland Institute of Technology. But what he finds is that there are a couple of students in there who have made basically a Hulk robot. Maybe robot is too weak a term. I mean, it's some kind of highly sophisticated electronic life-size Hulk with equivalent strength. And the professor was watching this in horror, because they built a monster basically who is breaking things in the lab, and they managed to hit the power button and turn it off, and then they get scolded by Professor Ryan, take this thing apart as soon as possible. And of course they put it off till tomorrow, which is a fatal the story won't happen if they do it right now. So. The story wouldn't happen, yeah.
I had 2 thoughts reading these pages. One, Arthur, who's the sort of lead trickster here, because this is basically an elaborate prank.
Mm-hmm. And they were going to have this our purpose was to march the Hulk down the field with the school band.
So it was going to be a
the
football
all-star game.
Yeah, football stunt, and then Ryan implies that they also would have had him participate in the game. Maybe get a touchdown or something. I was looking at Arthur and I was going, this guy looks just like Paul Williams, and it took me out of the story for a moment because I was hearing songs from the Phantom of the Paradise, and Rainbow Connection, and all this kind of Paul Williams hits. But also the fate of these two students. I mean, I've only read the 3 issues that we're sort of aiming for, but the fate of these 2 students is left unclear, because I'd be like, expel them. If they stay a day longer, they're going to come up with a social media app and ruin the American economy. That's exactly who these 2 are. They are proto-tech bros. They're going to destroy democracy. Anyway.
Okay, so they're going to disassemble him tomorrow. And as Kirby says, tomorrow is ever the word for too late. So the Unimind is kind of the ending its rap session or whatever it was they were doing in there. And it lets off cosmic energy, which causes we see a couple of examples of various machines around the world being kind of driven haywire by this cosmic energy. A ship that suddenly tripled in speed and can't be stopped. Some cars that are careening out of control. And then, of course, it affects the Hulk robot. The Hulk robot's eyes snap open, it says, and there's no remote control apparatus on Earth that can stop it now.
I mean, I find it funny that I was just joking with you about tech bros, and then we just saw cars careening out of control. And, it's very much of the moment. Driverless cars run amok. No, I find this interesting because the cosmic, we keep being told, and it's this sort of passively phrased cause, the cosmic energy, is imbued in this Hulk robot, and he becomes this creature of destruction. But so it's passive in that, like, the Eternals caused this.
Right.
This happened because of them, in effect, But what I find interesting about it is that the energy is attracted to this automaton who looks like the Hulk, a creature who is already imbued with gamma radiation, which made him this out-of-control monster. And it's almost like the shape of the object determined the output of it. It's almost like it manifested the Hulk.
Yeah, if they made a Spider-Man robot, it wouldn't have turned destructive. It would have been swinging from webs and fighting Doc Ock.
And cracking terrible puns. Yeah, and reading Ayn Rand, like... But
Right.
We got the Hulk.
Dating Gwen Stacy.
Yes. She's dead, Tim.
Oh, no. Or maybe dating the Gwen Stacy robot.
The Gwen Stacy robot, or the Gwen Stacy clone, or any number of other Gwen Stacys. Gwen Stacy from another dimension. Who knows?
Right. Spider-Gwen.
It's Gwen's all the way down.
So the Unimind is coming to an end. It begins to dissolve into its simpler but fantastic components. So that's over, and now all of the Eternals are flying around out again, or levitating. I guess that's the correct term here, not flying, but same difference. And so we see the best known characters of the series, Icarus and Margot and Cersei and so forth. Margot and Sam Holden are kind of like, wow, that was interesting.
You're right. It is frustrating that we just have this absence of explanation. Like, what happened?
Yeah, like, it's over.
Yeah.
That's it.
Moving on.
Yeah, and you're right. Cersei says, we'll go back to New York and throw a Unimind party.
We're going to the after party, the after party.
But yeah, there's no discussion of anything that happened in the Unimind or what it's going to lead to. I mean, we don't even see or hear anything about the Celestials in these 3 issues, which is pretty unusual.
With the exception of Makari, exclaiming "by the gods," and it's interesting to me because when Eternals say that, they are referring to the Celestials, but the Eternals are stand-ins for our gods, our ancient gods, Mercury and Zeus and so on and so forth. So I find it interesting that they keep talking about gods.
The gods. Yeah. It's kind of like those books where you see the cover of the book you're looking at is being held by someone on the cover, and so then within that there's a picture of the same cover, and on and on.
Is this where we have that? I mean, because I think one thing that is consistent with these issues for me, yes, here it is. One thing that's consistent in this series for me is how much I love Cersei. I love Cersei. She is just a camp delight. She's fantastic. And she keeps flirting with this anthropologist and sort of talking about how delightful he is, and etc. But there's this sarcastic little aside she has. She goes, "Hi ho, what else is new? Human fears seem endless." The dripping contempt. And let's get our win per episode, Tim. The bloody movie, Cersei is so boring in that movie. And weird and a bit strange, and she's so much more interesting.
I thought you were going to mention Alan Moore as a 1 per episode.
I know. I'm saving that. I'm saving that for when it really matters.
Okay, keeping your powder dry.
Try and get 1 per episode, though. Always get 1 in.
Okay. So now Makari has this little egg-shaped craft that he summons, and we'll see later that he gets into it with, Margot and Sam. But we go back to the Hulk robot crashing out of the lab, tearing a tree up, not by the roots. The roots are left in the ground, but the tree is completely disconnected from its roots.
Yeah, he snaps a tree in half. Yep.
And he goes out on the road, and there's a van coming, which he jumps onto, riding on the top of it. And the people inside are freaking out, of course. But what keeps bothering me in this is that it gives the appearance of the Hulk, but people never say, "Oh, it's the Hulk." I mean, you would think that it's the Marvel Universe, so they would recognize the Hulk as the Hulk, but it's a monster.
Yeah, it's interesting because we have that line of distance, that sort of attempt by Kirby to keep this separate. Now, later on, the journalists do say something about the Hulk, and Icarus doesn't know who the Hulk is, so he's not responding. But then the journalists go on to mention all these other Marvel characters. And there's also a scene that I made note of with the Walter Cronkite stand-in, where he talks about this is a Marvel character. So,
well, that was what I was going to talk about when we get there.
Yeah, we'll get to that. But so there's a degree of plausible deniability which suggests that these are recognizable Marvel Comics properties. So it's people saying, "Oh, it's a robot that looks like the comic book character, the Incredible Hulk." That's what seems to be the sort of edge Kirby's working on.
Yeah, since you brought it up, that was where I thought if he had an editor that it would have been phrased differently, because the way that he has the characters talking about it, they're talking about them as Marvel Comics characters. Now, it's been established that Marvel Comics exist in the Marvel Universe, but first and foremost, these should be treated as actual beings in this world, rather than they're talked about as if they're people who stepped off of the comic book pages. So just calling them like Marvel characters is a little weird.
I mean, I find it works because I think it's just Kirby trying to keep that critical distance. But also in our world, there's been so many examples of this, but you remember the protest movement in the UK where it was fathers protesting that they were denied rights to their children. And they would perform these stunts where they would dress up as characters and occupy buildings or climb the exterior of buildings. So somebody actually dressed up as Spider-Man and climbed on top of a building and put himself at risk as part of this protest movement for fathers. And I remember at the time the reporters referred to him as like, it's Spider-Man. Oh, he's Marvel's Spider-Man. There's that sort of, that is how the media reacts to things. They associate the story with the recognizable element. They don't clarify. They don't say, here's a middle-aged loser in a costume. They say it's Marvel's Spider-Man. It's very apt in a way that they will say the thing that people recognize first and maybe give you some context. But they will not actually err on the side of clarity above all. So it worked for me, but I actually thought that scene, the media scene, is the most interesting scene in these issues that we're reading in the storyline. The moment I saw it, oh, okay, here we go. There's something fun here. But yeah, we'll get to that.
Okay, so Hulk is riding on this van, and then we switch to Makari's capsule. It seems like it's bigger on the inside than it looks on the outside. Okay, it's not only Makari and Sam and Margot, but also Cersei and Icarus who are in this thing. So it seats 5 for crying out loud. And they are flying from Olympia to, I guess, New York. I think that's where we end up. But somewhat, Cersei is saying, "Must you travel this fast? We shall have little time to make ourselves at ease." So, like, what's your hurry? Let's party while we're in this thing. I mean, hardly time to open the wine before we land.
Yeah, it's like to take the scenic route.
And we see them zooming over the Earth. You can see the curve of the Earth, and they're picking up some signs of cosmic power somewhere in the U.S., and they're trying to pinpoint exactly where that's coming from. Now, I mean, we've seen all the other vehicles it affected, so you would think there would be many points of cosmic power being sensed, but of course, for the story, it has to be just the Hulk robot.
But not only that, again, if this was the Marvel Universe, there's all sorts of cosmic shenanigans.
That's true. Yeah, besides what's in the story.
They burst in on top of the Fantastic Four playing a game of bridge. What's the problem?
I mean, Captain Marvel's still around, the original Captain Marvel. Silver Surfer might be in the area. It's
all sorts of cosmic beings and cosmic affected people, and then you've got mutants like Havoc from the X-Men who generates cosmic energy. All sorts of stuff. Anyway, this was not 616. This is another Marvel world that Kirby wants to have for his Eternals to play in.
Yeah, seems that way. So Cersei says, "Ridiculous, the humans don't have cosmic power. This is some mistake." So they come back down towards the surface and see the wreckage of that van from before that the Hulk robot was riding on. Now, the fate of the riders is never addressed, but it seems likely that they're now dead. And so somebody's responsible for these deaths, and that's never addressed either.
Well, I found it interesting that this is not the Hulk. This is Robot Hulk, or as we later see referred to, Pseudo or Pseudo. I don't know how people prefer. So I always say Pseudo. I hate Pseudo. Anyway.
Yeah, I'd never heard Pseudo.
Oh, it drove me nuts. Pseudo-Hulk actually goes on a bigger killing spree and destructive reign of New York than the real world Hulk in comics up to this point. There's a degree of plausible deniability. Oh well, that wasn't the Hulk. That's the robot Hulk. This is basically a Zack Snyder movie at a certain point. It's just the degree of destruction is so extreme, and I find it remarkable that it's this sort of noted failed Jack Kirby storyline, and there's a lot of implied bloodshed and destruction here.
Yeah, maybe it's a fake Hulk in order to preserve the real Hulk's reputation. If he's supposed to be a hero, more or less, he's treated that way as far as the comics are concerned, even though everybody hates him. At least in these days, when I don't know, I haven't read the Hulk recently. I think it's all different now, and there are 25 people with Hulk powers and blah blah blah. Anyway. So then they see a bunch of frightened people and police with guns who are trying to shoot at this Pseudo-Hulk. And so the Eternals actually act like superheroes here, which hasn't happened very much in the series, because the story has been that they're not really superheroes per se, but maybe that was part of the editorial pressure here. Like, they're supposed to be superheroes. This is a superhero comic book company. So we get into a fight scene here.
Yeah, and this is where we have the interesting detail that Makari actually could be seriously injured that I was referring to before. Because the Hulk just snatches him out of the air and then just starts throwing him around the place.
Right. Well, and Icarus is worried about just Makari being in Hulk's grip, that could crush him. He'll be crushed to a pulp, he thinks. But yeah, then Pseudo-Hulk throws him, and interestingly, the way that the speed of the throw is represented is that Makari is drawn in the way like the Human Torch was originally drawn, with the red with all the black lines on him. I thought that was a little odd. Oh, where's Johnny? Johnny Storm is here? Okay.
Yeah. Makari is red shifting. That's how fast he's moving. And Cersei's there to give him a gentle landing. I will say I find it interesting that you've got Makari, who's all about speed, and you've got Icarus, who's all about strength, and Cersei again in these issues is shown to be more creative in her use of her powers. Like, she's changing environments, she's changing the substance of things, and there's some fun with that here. But yeah, Icarus is the one who can get in close and punch.
So then, yeah, Icarus is fighting Pseudo-Hulk. We got a full page of wham, pow, crack, zock, zam, crack, as Pseudo-Hulk is breaking off a pipe to use as a weapon. Then, as the issue ends, Icarus's eyes are starting to turn into some kind of a eye beam. And he's thinking, I pray that this is equal to his own cosmic forces. Dzz is the sound. Want to know what happens next? Don't miss Disaster Area.
And again, that's the frustration of these issues, because each chapter of this storyline ends with a moment where an Eternal shows up and could, in effect, resolve the problem straight away. And we've been shown just how powerful they are. But this Hulk robot, the two students from the Maryland Institute of Technology, he's actually giving them a run for their money because it has this cosmic energy in it. So there's a bit of hand-wavy notions here, because as you were talking about before, it's like, why can't they just behave like superheroes, is maybe the note that he was given. It's because we've established that they're gods.
Yeah.
And, the order of magnitude of these fights needs to be such that gods are challenged. So that's actually not a typical superhero fight in this time, because you're talking about a cosmic weirdness needs to get involved. And instead we've got this disappointing version of that, which is like, yeah, it's a robot with superpowers that's can fight a god to a standstill. And Icarus should be able to just one-shot him Like in two students made a robot mascot, and it's currently punching out gods. That's what we're looking at here.
Right.
Coming up, issues 15 and 16, containing destruction on a massive scale that we can assume was never reflected in any other Marvel book. Maybe this really is happening in a separate universe? By the way, don't forget we have a voicemail. To leave us a message, click the Leave a Voicemail link on the sidebar at deconstructingcomics.com.
Hey, I'm Jen.
And I'm Sean. We're here to tell you about our podcast, Worst Collection Ever.
And this is the show where we tell you about the worst comic book collection in existence. And it just happens to belong to us.
We have some of the worst comics from the 70s, 80s, and 90s. They're bad.
Terrible.
They're not worth anything.
No good.
Why do we own
Very
them?
bad.
I own a number of issues of Terror Inc. and Guy Gardner.
Basically, we go around to local comic book stores and we buy everything we can out of dollar boxes.
We tell you about the weird stuff in them. We tell you about stuff that's related to them. We go into tangents. And we're very uninformed, so...
Oh my god, totally. But totally check out our podcast because you'll hear us just talk and joke about Marvel books and DC books from God only knows when.
That's right. It's our show, Worst Collection Ever, every Tuesday on iTunes, Stitcher, anywhere you get your podcasts. Download, rate, subscribe, tell a friend.
It'll be good and terrible, but good.
So, issue 15. This issue, Icarus alone against the cosmic-powered Hulk. Final fury as Titans clash. Raging battle turns an entire city into a disaster area. There's a lot of copy on this cover, although when you look at it, it doesn't seem like all that much, because a lot of it is pretty tiny.
I mean, on the other hand, though, this is a rare, honest cover. The city is leveled.
Yeah.
The would-be love interest of the series just does spend all her time going, oh, what to do? Oh, I wish I could help, but I can't. Which is what she's shown doing here. And yeah, Icarus punches the Hulk a bunch. It's actually an honest cover.
Yeah. And Margot is there with her in her The Scream pose.
Or Macaulay Culkin in Home Alone. Yeah.
And on the splash page, Icarus is shooting these eye beams. That green hulk of a creature has resisted my every effort to halt its rampage. I've no choice but to blast it with disintegrating beams. Emmet shrugs.
End of fight. But no, he dodges.
The Hulk starts jumping away, and Cersei hits it with some kind of a ray. Cersei's arm suddenly flashes forward, a weapon of grace and power common to all female Eternals. And as he crashes into a building, he seems to turn to stone, and they think that they've won, but that cosmic power reasserts itself, and then he's back to the robot Hulk, and things are still getting bad. So Icarus lunges at it and is kind of, I guess, pushed away, and he seems to bounce off the side of a building. Now, the way this was drawn, I kept thinking where he was hitting was like one of those giant TV screens that I don't think anybody had in the mid-70s.
Yeah. It could be that, or maybe potentially it could be a giant billboard. But I think what's intended is the force of the impact is rendered here, and it looks like a screen. It looks like I think it's just the side of a building, but I mean, yeah, you're right. It does look like he's hit a giant television screen, giant display screen.
But yeah, there's nothing displayed on it. It's just, we just see the impact marks on it. So maybe there are actually other like windows or something in there that we can't see because of the impact lines. And Hulk grabs Cersei and is jumping away with her. And then we see Makari's egg-shaped vehicle, which, because of the
like window design on it. I kept thinking this was like a big mouth with teeth.
You're right. It looks like something out of Yellow Submarine.
Yeah, this big like toothy grin in the middle of the air.
Wow. That's a good pull.
Yeah, that is kind of a psychedelic image. So Makari and the two humans are in there just reacting to what's going on. And Hulk takes her to the top of I'm not sure if it's the Empire State Building, but it's just referred to as that tall building.
I mean, we need to get a King Kong reference in here somehow.
Yeah, he's going to do the King Kong bit.
Oh, he's doing the King Kong bit, everybody. Get the planes.
And he rips off a huge tip of the tower to throw at the egg-shaped vehicle, which is able to maneuver out of the way. What happens to it beyond that? This projectile, it must have crashed somewhere and killed a bunch of people.
The degree of destruction in these issues is insane. It's not a contained fight at all.
And I keep thinking that since apparently in these three issues, it doesn't seem like anybody ever puts together what actually happened, that this cosmic power came from the Unimind and empowered this Hulk robot. And that being the case, since later the makers of the robot do reveal themselves, wouldn't they be arrested?
Send them to jail. Expel them. Send them to jail. Do not let them near a computer again.
Or a lab, yeah.
Or any like scientific equipment.
And Margot says, I have the distinct feeling that I may have to scream. So she's feeling her Lois Lane 1940s paradigm here.
There's some howlers. Awful lines in this, particularly from Icarus. Icarus has a couple of really dumb exchanges with people where he's using unnecessary adjectives and things. And it's just like it's bad. It's really bad.
So Icarus is able to maneuver his craft to momentarily knock the Hulk robot for a loop, but now the Hulk's eyes are surging with cosmic energy. See, kind of a similar design to what we saw in Icarus's eyes before. And the Hulk is able to push the egg craft so that it bounces around off of different buildings like a pinball.
Exactly. The immediate association is a pinball machine. It's a
surprisingly not mentioned in the book.
Yeah, given how literal everything's been.
The backlash of his swing is powerful enough to send Makari's vessel ricocheting from building to building.
And there you go. You've got the same rendering of the impact, the site of impact, looking like a flat screen. But
that's true.
It's just meant to be a point of impact.
Yeah.
You're right. I mean, like at the time, there probably wasn't that association. So there wasn't that visual language. It wasn't understood the way we have.
I had never seen such a thing until I got to Tokyo in 1989, and there was like one place in town that had a big screen like that. Now they're all over the place, but
that is so cool. That is it's just, again, we've been talking about in our discussions of Jack Kirby, we've been talking about, wow, he anticipated this. Wow, he anticipated that. I'm not saying that this is not quite the same, but it just shows just the sense of the difference in time, that in his era, that wasn't the thing.
Right. Yeah. Nobody would have thought that in the 70s, but from our perspective, that's what it brings to mind. Because, we have something that didn't exist then. We have a lot of things that didn't exist then. Some of which we still wish didn't exist, but the police are shooting at the Hulk robot. That doesn't do any good. A seismic tremor shakes the roof as the creature's foot smashes down. and this floor that the police are on is splintering away. Yeah, so then was where the media part comes in. Now, I don't know if you realize, so a couple pages later, there's a character named Harry Cronkite.
Yeah, the Walter Cronkite knockoff.
Well,
yeah.
So here we have Walter Reasoner. So Cronkite's first name, and so there was another famous newsman named Harry Reasoner. So he's switched their first names here.
Oh, right.
And then intentionally misspelled Cronkite to be Cronkite. So it's not quite on the nose. But yeah, this reporter in this scene is Walter Reasoner. And he's trying to interview Icarus, and there's got a cameraman there. Is that an 1870s TV camera? It looks more like a movie camera, maybe.
Yeah, look, the frame of reference has always been like somewhat out of date. These guys are still drawing the standard stuff that they were drawing 30 years previous. So
right. Well, yeah, at some point when I was doing my comic, I had to start thinking, when I draw a TV, it's not a CRT. It shouldn't be a CRT. It was just my habit of drawing comics in the 70s and 80s. TVs are all really thick.
Yeah, they're boxes. Yeah.
Like, oh, wait.
You've got a curved screen.
Modern. Now it should be a flat screen.
But yes, this is the most interesting scene in the issue for me, and I think even the idea of these are actual media people he's taking off. That's great. I didn't know about Reasoner. I was familiar with Cronkite, but I wasn't familiar with Reasoner. But like the scene where they're mobbing Icarus. In this moment of crisis, the media people are all suddenly there, and they're like all around, they're clustering around him, and then they're trying to get him to talk about other Marvel comic book characters. And there is again this reference to all these are comic properties, and it's there's a sense here of this is a very serious moment. We're trying to save the city. No, but what about this? What about this? What about this? And it feels like, for me, this feels like a metaphor for the editorial noting of the Eternals. Why isn't Doctor Doom in this story? Why isn't Thor in this story? Why, Icarus is being badgered in a way that I feel like Kirby is being badgered while working on this book. Or maybe these represent also the comic community at the time, because you also had fans saying, "Oh, why doesn't this? Why doesn't this? Why can't we have who would win in a fight, to Hulk or Superman?" Is that level of trivia that's being sort of depicted here? That's why I find it interesting.
Hey, Mr. Reasoner. Ask him if Dr. Doom and Thor are fighting too. A fair question, sir. Yeah, is it true that the Inhumans are coming? These comic fans think that all of Marvel's characters are running amok. What's really happening?
It's so clever, and it just I came alive when I got to this page, because I was like, oh, this is commentary. This is something insightful here. Whereas a lot of the dialogue up to this point has been serviceable at best, just getting characters from point A to point B. There's something interesting happening here.
Yeah, I hadn't looked at it that way, but yeah, that makes sense that he's sort of playing here with expectations of the readers and or the editorial level. So yeah, everybody wants to interview the Eternal, but he says, "You're blowing your." There's a misspelling here of "your." The first "your" should be "you-are," Y-O-U''re. "You're blowing your priorities. I'm needed at the source of the trouble. Can you elaborate? Take 1 minute. Give us half a minute. Holy cow, he's levitating. Keep the camera on him, Lester." So yeah, doesn't have. I mean, the city's being destroyed, so yeah, he's dead on as far as priority problem here. And yeah, the Hulk robot continues to destroy everything. And there's fire happening. I guess this is coming from the Hulk's cosmic power.
No, you're not looking at the following page. It's Cersei.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Right.
So this is like Cersei's conjuring up dragons out of chimneys, and they're shooting fire over him, and yeah, he's being assaulted with these images. He's also doing a lot of destruction at the same time, so I'm sure there is actually fire happening, but from some sort of explosive agent. But Cersei's conjuring up this sort of scene to intimidate him.
Right, okay. But Icarus says, your gimmicks buy us time and nothing more. And she's kind of PO'd at him for belittling her efforts, but she says, my efforts may only buy us time, but all you've gotten us is laughs. Icarus says, that's all too true, Cersei. That's why the situation grows more fearful each passing second. She says, even boors can acquire the knack of being right. Neither one of them is really sure what they can do to actually stop this thing. And then we have another media scene with Truman Swars, Millie McCoy, and Harry Cronkite. And they've got the professor and the two errant students on the TV screen. They're on Skype. They're on Zoom or something, I guess. And so it's revealed that these two kids created the robot. A computerized replica of a popular Marvel character was built here by these two young men. That's true. We did a great job. It moved and behaved just like the real Hulk, completely under our control. Then something happened, which we still can't understand. Its circuitry changed somehow. The thing just ran wild. So there's no suggestion that the students bear any responsibility for the death and destruction that this thing is causing.
Well, I mean, Kirby has some fun with his Cronkite because, you've got a from drafting board to deviltry, student gantry in revolt against humans everywhere. And so there's an implied editorial critique of the students that this is what happens. You don't send them to war. They build killer robots. Damn hippies.
And then Millie, the reporter, is talking about the Eternals and what the fact that Makari's craft is sitting in the street and they don't know if the people inside are alive or dead. But the three of them then do emerge from it, and they seem to be fine. And Makari, of course, leaves them there and goes off to keep fighting the thing. Then there's another impact of something, whoom, which breaks up the very street. It's as if a major earthquake is hit. And Sam's glasses are on crooked. That shows you how bad the impact was.
It's serious. Now it's serious.
Yeah. He's grown stronger, more savage. He's raining tons of debris upon the streets. Everybody's running away. We see the Hulk robot with flames behind him. A bunch of helicopters are approaching, and the Hulk throws a piece of debris and destroys one of the choppers. The guy says, good grief, he smashed our lead chopper. Pour it into him. Okay.
Now, if this was an episode of the A-Team, moments before the helicopter got smashed, you'd see the two pilots leap outside and land safely.
Right, no deaths, and every bullet shot misses.
It's just it's an intimidation gesture. But this is not the A-Team. This is Pseudo-Hulk who kills.
Yeah, I mean, this has to be different from the Marvel Universe because New York wasn't destroyed like this in any other comic. You don't see Daredevil and Spidey going, what are we going to do with our horribly destroyed city?
Which is funny because now it is. Now it's happening all the time. Now there's, there's this constant sense of massive waves of destruction happening around the planet all the time. And
damage control is really busy.
Damage Control should be the most popular comic book series out right now because there's so much material to work with. I guess they don't want you to dwell on that, but I've always thought that's the greatest idea for a comic book. R.I.P. Dwayne McDuffie. But yeah, no, I feel as if comics today reflect the nature of this comic in such a way that the impact has completely been lost.
Mm-hmm.
And once again, I will refer to Blood Hunt, the recent Marvel event where the entire planet is besieged by vampires, and I guess we're okay now.
Yep.
Let's not dwell on that.
All right, so there's all this destruction, and these three Eternals and the police are facing up against the Hulk robot, and Icarus says, "We've got to marshal our own powers and use them with a will equal to his. Wait, behold!" And Zurus appears behind the Hulk. "Let my hand decide this fate." And I liked the last panel. "Great Zurus, it's great Zurus."
That's great. That's great. And Hulk is drawn. There's been a couple of panels where Hulk is drawn with a degree of expressiveness that's been quite surprising. And here he looks like a boy who's been caught with his hand in the cookie jar. Oh, shit.
Great Zurus and the Big City Crypt in the next exciting issue. Get it?
No, Jack, I don't want to. I don't want to get it. Stop.
So, issue 16, I was a bit surprised to note no image of the Hulk on the cover. It's like, oh, now we're already going to move on to the next big thing that also has nothing to do with what happened in the Unimind. No. Icarus trapped by the Thing in the Big City Crypt, and he's being pulled in through the ground down below by a big hand, and he says, "Thina, Makari, stay back. There's no way to save me now."
It almost looks like a recycled page from an adventure cover where somebody's drowning in quicksand. Like it has the sort of styling of, oh no, he's been caught in the quicksand. Which, as somebody once said recently, as an adult, I always assumed I'd been dealing with quicksand more often than I actually have. Because it was everywhere.
I just noticed he says Thina, but that's Cersei. Thina's nowhere near there.
Yeah, that's true. You're right.
It's a
good catch.
There.
Ooh, goof.
So, splash page, Big City Crypt is the title, and we see Zurus, Icarus, and in the background, Makari facing the Hulk robot, who's going, "Urgh."
I do enjoy that Crypt is lettered similar to Tales from the Crypt. That's a nice little touch.
Yeah. I'm sure that's not an accident. So Zurus wants to take control of the situation here, deal with the Hulk robot. The Hulk throws some debris at him, which just bounces off him harmlessly, and Zurus says, "The foe is puzzled. Though he reeks of the stuff of stars, he cannot conceive of a mind which can produce a protective force shield." So Zurus takes a hold of the Hulk's shoulders, and what does he do? Like the next panel now, Hulk has like cosmic energy. That's right. So
he's
Zurus
drawing
is
it out of him,
draining all the cosmic energy out of the Hulk robot. And the Hulk then kind of jumps away, and Icarus says, "May the wisdom and power of Zurus remain for all time." But Zurus says, "Yield not to the calm of false security, Icarus. The danger is far from over." So the robot is going to be weaker, but still a threat, because he was plenty powerful already. Although you would think that now that the cosmic power is out of the Hulk, that
he would just turn off, because it was the cosmic power that powered him on.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. Are we left to believe that it's like fundamentally changed this robot mechanism in such a way that it has a life of its own, independent of the like abundant cosmic power that was empowering it? So you remove that element, you remove the sort of godlike element, and you basically still have a powerful robot that could smash shit up. but now it's not able to recover from, say, being turned into stone,
Right.
or be blasted with energy beams, which is what they should have immediately have done.
Yes. But now it's getting away from them. So rather than chase it, they sit down and think about what they should do. And Zurus says the task is for Icarus and you alone. It's imperative the final subjection of the Hulk must be seen to at once. Overtake him and make certain that this ends without further incident. And they see the Hulk jumping away and seemingly shooting off fireworks. Now, I guess that this is the robot itself coming apart. And there's still Kirby crackle leaking out of his back. And Hulk lands on the ground and then tears into the street and goes underground. He soon breaks through to the underground power system, which services the city with electricity and gas, but the fiery plague never leaves him. Although he grows weaker and crawls to escape, his attempt is fruitless. And then we switch to above, where the police are there, and there's a big hole in the ground with Kirby crackle coming out of it. And the police are afraid there's going to be a huge explosion, so they tell everybody to get out of there. And a guy in a fedora says, "There's never a taxi in sight when you need one." And come to think of it, yeah, the fashions are not 70s fashions.
No. We've observed this for quite a while now, but yes, it's just time has not hit these creators yet.
Yeah, Ditko does the same thing.
I remember the first time I picked up an X-Men comic, and Bobby Drake, the Iceman, had a pocket chain, and I was shocked. I was like, what is that? What is that thing?
The pocket watch?
No, like, remember they used to be in the 90s? They used to have
okay.
Yeah, you used to have a little chain hanging out of your pocket, which doesn't exist anymore. They're probably just getting out of the habit of drawing that now.
And so now Cersei and Zurus are being interviewed for TV again, and they're having to explain, like, what are these humans doing with them, Margot and Sam, and they're getting interviewed too. And we see a family in their home watching on TV. And the thing about this scene was, what has happened to that little girl's head? It's just another example of comics artists not being able to draw convincing kids that don't look horrifically deformed.
True, but even in the sort of impromptu press conference scene where they're all gathered around Zurus to ask him questions, do you notice to the far left of the panel, wearing a purple chemise, is that Frida Kahlo?
I don't know who that is.
The artist, Frida Kahlo.
Okay.
Famously played in the movie by Eternal star Salma Hayek.
Okay. I don't know. I think that's supposed to be a guy, but who can tell? But yeah, that little girl has like an expanding brain, I think. From the back, she looks normal, but then you see the front and her, either that or else she's got like, I don't know, like a beehive hairdo or something, but she's got a lot of hair hanging down too. I don't know what's going on there. So then there is indeed an explosion. and the fire department's coming, and Icarus and Makari are coming, and wondering if perhaps the Hulk robot, which they never even understand is a robot, I don't think, whether it's perished in the explosion.
Well, no, we've established that it's a Hulk robot because we've had the students admit to it.
Well, that's true. But did the Eternals hear that report? I don't know.
Oh, right. Okay.
They weren't in that scene.
They weren't in that scene. Maybe they've since learned.
Yeah,
maybe
or
Margot passed on the note.
Maybe they got an update on their phones, like, oh,
yeah.
Oh, whoops! This is 1977. Maybe not. And now they see there seems to be some kind of animal burrowing under the surface and creating like gopher trails in the concrete. And then this is where Icarus is pulled underground. Neither Cersei nor Athena is visible in this scene, just Makari running towards him. And he says, "Quickly, Makari, my leg's been seized." And then doesn't even have time to utter the warning that he does on the cover. He's just pulled underground. And Makari follows him and finds that there's some kind of ancient cavern catacombs built under the ground. The shaft was not carved by nature. Somewhere in the ancient past, many hands now, stilled by time, were put to work to shape this enigma. So it doesn't look like the work of Robert Moses either.
No, Robert Moses wasn't involved. There were no people of color for him to displace. This brings to mind a lot of what's going on in DC at the moment with Gotham, where you've got this whole concept of an undercity that the Court of Owls are involved with. And I recently read Christian Ward's Black Label Batman book all about this idea of an under Gotham. It was really interesting. Beautiful art. But yeah, these in a single panel, we just have a glimpse of this sort of cyclopean architecture that Lovecraft would be proud of. And that's the implied, we find out that it's got a whole connection to the Deviants and the Eternals. And so this is an ancient part of America that was previously occupied.
And Makari finds this huge metal door with some kind of design on it that we just see kind of a diagonal. I mean, we what's the word I want here? The perspective is pretty good on this, that we don't see the door straight on. It's really at the kind of a steep angle that we just get kind of an idea of what the front of it looks like. We're seeing the edge mostly.
You're right. Like, it's such a great way to give you a sense of the whole from only seeing a part of it, and the sense of scale as well. Yeah. It's great. It's a lovely. This sequence here, at least, is interesting to me. I kind of suspect, given how little Hulk robot is involved from this point on, I kind of suspect that we have what was a previously developed story being rammed into this editorial demanded story. And it's like stitched in almost. So this feels more complicated and more complex than Hulk robot smashes up a city and a bunch of people run away screaming, for 3 issues.
Yeah, well, I assume what happened here is that the Hulk robot was destroyed in the explosion, or maybe caused the explosion, which awakened this other being that we're going to see. And Makari is saying this gargantuan metal door, it too is of a legendary origin. It was forbidden to be opened, yet I find it ajar. Who could have? And then a big hand is grabbing him. Looks like a large green mummy hand. And voice from off panel saying, "I could have opened it, and I did."
Yeah, I had a moment of worry that we were now going to be introduced to the living monolith, who was an X-Men villain who, basically is a giant mummy, but is not the living monolith.
Yeah. So there's still flame coming from this explosion, which Zurus is able to just completely extinguish by throwing lightning bolts. And he says that trick took 1,000 years of practice. So it doesn't come to him automatically. I thought that was kind of interesting. There's training involved to do this kind of thing.
Oh, yeah. He's the best at what he does, and what he does takes a long time.
And he's concerned they haven't heard from Icarus and Makari, so they shouldn't leave yet. But he's going to go down into the pit, and he tells Cersei, don't follow me, don't help me. I order you to join your friends and wait for my return. Do as I command. And he jumps into the pit. He's down inside and says, my worst fears have been realized. The crypt is here as I expected and torn open by the explosion. And the tomb is empty. Its occupant is gone. Dromedon is this being. The brain snatcher is free to plague this century. But there's some kind of large gold helmet that was on him, I guess, to keep him from controlling people's minds. And Zurus is thinking he can use this as a weapon.
Would you call that an oubliette? Is that what that is? Is it an oubliette? Sort of a torture device?
I don't know. I saw it as some kind of a restraining thing on a person's brain power.
Yeah, okay, so oubliette actually is just a reference to a kind of dungeon. Sorry, I always associated it with that sort of man in the iron mask restraint, which is what this is suggestive of, but no, it's the space that's the oubliette. Okay. Come on, where's crossed in French references.
And he's filling us in with thought balloons. It says, when the Deviant Empire was at its height, they bred Dromedon to destroy the Eternals. Instead, they had to entomb him for fear of their own safety. So, just like the robot Hulk, apparently Dromedon went out of control of its creators. Seems to be a lot of that going around.
Yeah, like the theme is emerging. But also, we've seen this already with the deviants. They keep breeding these weapons that then turn on them. The reject, for example.
Zurus finds Makari and Icarus fighting each other while they keep apologizing to each other. So they're being controlled. They're being forced to fight each other. Although under great pain, Icarus is able to restrain himself, to stop fighting Makari. Makari is having a harder time doing that. But then Zurus comes in and breaks it up, and with his power, he's able to release them from the brain control. On the last page of the issue, Zurus is facing off against Dromedon, and he has that gold helmet thing in his hands. But it sounds like Cersei is going to rebel against Zurus's wishes here, because the next issue is called Cersei the Terrible.
Yeah, well, it's interesting because, again, it's so telling that just in these last pages when Dromedon enters, everything suddenly steps up, not just in terms of scale, but also in terms of my interest. Because now we're dealing with psychological warfare, because you've got the two characters turning on one another. And here on the last page, you have Zurus, who've been shown to be all powerful, if you like, among all the Eternals. He's able to snuff out all the fires of the city. He's got these incredible powers. Here he's faced with Dromedon, and he's experiencing psychological warfare. He, for a moment, thinks he's on fire. Then he thinks he's made of stone. Like he's experiencing this in real time, and that's similar to Cersei's ability. So I can see where Cersei will get involved, because she can actually fight Dromedon on this level. She's similarly empowered. She's got a similar ability, altering reality. And this is where the story becomes interesting. But the previous stuff with the Hulk just punching things and destroying the city, and again, I know I'm a broken record in this, but this is why I don't like Bloodhound so much. it's what's the point? Like that you fundamentally altered America now. Now you've okay, well, New York doesn't exist. There's a huge crater where New York used to be. How do you deal with that as a story? You don't. You move on to the next thing. And you go, okay, well, now I've lost my interest.
Yeah, and then you go to Spider-Man and New York looks fine.
Yeah, exactly. Whereas this stuff where you've got hidden labyrinthine cities underground where evil gods that can warp reality are entombed and they have to be restrained somehow, but they're changing your perception of what's happening. That's the stuff. Now we're talking. Now we've got a scale that I can get behind. That's my complaint.
Mm-hmm.
I heard tell of these issues like this was the low point. This is when clearly the control was taken off Kirby. He's still credited as editor, as you pointed out. It's plotter and writer and scripter and all the rest of it. But like I feel as if he's like, no, this is what you're doing. You're doing this now. More fights. And
Kirby bargaining and saying, well, rather than the real Hulk, can I have like a fake Hulk?
But you said it yourself before. I mean, it may even be he came up with this compromise and they're saying, oh, well, we can't have the Hulk kill all these people. So it's actually a robot Hulk,
Mm-hmm.
The whole thing feels compromised. It just feels like attempting to meet in the middle and just failing to come up with something that's engaging or interesting or
I wonder if like his original idea was to have some other kind of creature doing that rather than a pretend Hulk, or if the whole story was just something that was improvised in order to accommodate editorial demands.
Yeah, I don't know if this is accounted anywhere. Before we started talking, I tried to come up with a specific source on that Kirby was forced to put the Hulk in the comic. It's something I've read a lot. I've seen it in different places, but I can't find a specific, that's what happened. I would like to be able to attribute that to something. I feel as if the Dromedon passage was a pre-existing story that was going to take place. I also feel that your instincts are correct in that there was going to be an aftermath to the Unimind. Like there had to be.
Yeah, why do it otherwise?
Yeah. So that's been interrupted. So I feel as if Kirby had progressed to a point and then he was asked to basically throw a lot of stuff out of the window and just do this. That's my suspicion. I don't know. I don't have facts, but that's just what it reads like to me.
And I'm wondering how he's going to wrap this up in the final 3 issues, which obviously the book was canceled. It wasn't like, okay, this is a 19-issue story. No, it's...
Yeah, I suspect poorly, Tim. I suspect it'll be disappointing.
Quite possible.
But yeah, it's a shame because we've been recording these episodes, and I think the statement that kept coming up was, this is surprisingly good. I quite like this. This is interesting. And now we've got to these issues. It's like, oh dear. Something went wrong.
Yeah, even without many Eternals in the books last time around, it was still quite interesting. But, okay, well, yeah, we'll get to those last 3 issues soon and see where this goes.
You won't want to miss it, folks.
The Eternals by Jack Kirby is published by Marvel. It's DCP In Touch, where we hear from our listeners. YouTube listener @KaneDarkstar comments on the Tim Catches Up with the MCU episode on Avengers Endgame. Yeah, gotta say I don't understand posting this 4 years later. Would have been interested in hearing your thoughts then, or a reflective commentary on it looking back now with the knowledge of all we have coming up. But I lost all interest once I realized how old this is, before Black Widow had even been released. I'm out at 6 minutes 19 seconds. Well, Kane Darkstar, I'm sorry the fact that the show was 4 years old was a deal breaker for you. As I announced at the start of the episode, it was originally published on our Patreon in 2020. Sometimes when you do a weekly show, it's hard to get an episode together in a given week, and I don't want to skip a week. So I'll put out either a Deconstructing Comics rerun or an episode of our old Patreon show. But I think the fact that it was recorded 4 years ago doesn't really change the content of our review, regardless of what's happened since then. I hope other listeners enjoyed it. Via our blog at deconstructingcomics.com, Ray commented on episode 813, in which Kumar and I discussed the first 3 volumes of Cross Game by Mitsuru Adachi. Ray writes, I'm so glad you guys did this one. I recently finished reading the entire series of Cross Game, and I have to say it was definitely charming and yet poignant. I never lost the thread. It was a story that went straight to its ending, and I loved Adachi's art. It was a blend of Dan DiCarlo with traditional manga. In the review, you wondered if someone who knew nothing about Koshien would understand. Even though I admit that I have lived in Japan, I had never heard of Koshien until this manga, and I think the gravity of it comes through clearly regardless. The other thing I would say is that I do know about the rule specificities of baseball, and if you do know this, there are moments when little throwaway thought balloons actually go deep into what a character is sensing from a play. I think Adachi has the remarkable ability to include non-baseball fans along with the avid aficionados. I've read Short Program 2, and I'm starting to conclude that Adachi is a master storyteller. Ray, glad to hear you enjoyed it. Kumar and I are planning to cover more of Cross Game in future episodes. Thanks to both of you for writing in. Everyone else, if you're on Facebook, join our group. There's a lot more listener participation there than there is on our Facebook page. If you're not on Facebook, you have plenty of other ways to contact us. Our episodes are automatically published as videos on YouTube by our podcast host, and you can leave comments there or on our blog at deconstructingcomics.com, via Twitter at deconcomics, through our Facebook page or group, and of course at our email address, mail@deconstructingcomics.com. Thanks to our patrons for supporting Deconstructing Comics, Critiquing Comics, and our other podcasts. To join them, go to patreon.com/deconcomics. Patrons get access to podcasts about the early years of The Amazing Spider-Man, Jim Starlin's run on Captain Marvel, including the expectations-defying graphic novel The Death of Captain Marvel, and, coming next month, Silver Age Batman. But you can only hear these shows if you pledge at least $4 a month. At the $2 a month level, my brother Paul and I discuss Batman 66 in our Bat Bits podcast. Check it out at patreon.com/deconcomics. Are you making a comic? Send it to us and we'll do a Critiquing Comics episode about it. Our theme is by J.B. Anderton. Next year, a new Fantastic Four movie is coming to theaters. Typical of me, I haven't seen any of the earlier FF movies, but as build-up to the release of the Fantastic Four First Steps, we're going to discuss all 4 movies here on the show, and we'll be crossing over with Kumar's show, Comic Book Movie Oblivion. So join us next week as Kumar and his co-host Jordan guest on this show while I'm guesting on theirs, to discuss the unreleased 1994 FF film by Roger Corman. Looking forward to catching this film on YouTube and talking about it next week. Till then, this is Tim, and thanks for listening to Deconstructing Comics.